If I were to ask you to close your eyes, and picture an apple, how vivid is that image in your head? You're not physically seeing an apple, but you're imagining the apple. If you're one of those people who really can't conjure up an image and like don't really have like an inner voice inside your head sometimes, people have actually noticed this in sort of human brain psychology, and they've given this term to it called aphantasia. When I first heard of this term and learning about what it is, people not being able to picture things in their head or not having an inner dialogue that sort of you can interact with, it honestly fascinated me because I literally can't imagine what life would be like if I were to have aphantasia like that. So for a while, I like sort of knew about that term and like kept it in the back of my head. But then semi-recently, over the past few years, I came across that term again, that condition that some people have. And I'm like, is there an opposite of that? So I looked up what the opposite of aphantasia is, and the term that Google gave me was hyperphantasia. And I found it very fascinating because it really described something about myself that always felt like a mystery to me, and it sort of helped me understand a little more about how my own brain works. So let me pull up the definition of aphantasia first. Okay, according to Google, aphantasia is the inability to voluntarily visualize mental images. And then if I look up hyperphantasia is the condition of having extremely vivid mental imagery. It is the opposite to it. So yeah, I've sort of always known that I had this ability in my head, and I almost felt like I was cheating at being an artist, because even since I was young, I always had this ability to sort of create images more easily than other people, especially after I've learned like the fundamentals of art, and I've been able to implement, those techniques and fundamentals into the way I create art. It always felt like I had a superpower or a cheat code at art. And I think that made me like a little bit imposter, or it felt like I had an imposter. I was an imposter because I wasn't really putting in the correct work that I saw other people doing. Like, I don't really practice a lot of art, at least not compared to like what other people do, but every time I do practice art, I always know that I have the ability to level up much faster than other people. And it felt like cheating. And I never really liked that. I'm naturally like more of a humble guy, and kind of me saying that is sort of the opposite of that, but I'm sort of acknowledging in my self-reflection of myself over the years, I've always tried to stay humble, especially when it comes to something that I'm so passionate about with art. But I always had this thing in the back of my head where I'm like, I don't know what is wrong with me, but I feel like I'm cheating because I'm more easily able to conjure these images in my head. And I feel like now that I've discovered my hyperphantastic side of my brain, I feel like I'm more comfortable exploring what that means for me. So let me go a little more into what happens with people with hyperphantasia. People with hyperphantasia can create detailed and clear mental imagery, with some reporting the ability to even see an object superimposed on the actual field of vision. That's something that I sort of have the ability to do. It's like I'm projecting the image in my head onto the paper or the canvas. It's not perfect, and it's actually something that I've actually trained myself to do. So I guess in that way, it's like I am a different kind of artist that doesn't go through the same pathways to create an image, if you know what I mean. But some of like the other things that fascinated me about hyperphantasia is that it's a multi-sensory thing, because it's the way the human brain processes information. The vividness isn't limited to vision. It can extend to all 5 senses, including sound, smell, taste, and touch. And this is actually really a key thing for me, because I've always had like sort of a sensitivity to taste. It's actually the reason why I don't really like alcohol, besides any like moral arguments that can be use for or against alcohol. Like, I don't mind alcohol, but I just can't get over the taste. Even like the smallest bit of alcohol in my mouth, like it just ruins the drink for me, you know? And as a kid, I always have been a picky eater, and I always hated that aspect of it. Like, why is my tongue so sensitive? And why am I like so sensitive in general? Other things that are associated with hyperphantastic people is like autobiographical memories can be exceptionally rich, detailed, almost as if you're reliving the past with full emotional and sensory intensity. And that has messed me up, let me tell you. So I'm honestly quite lucky. I haven't had a lot of trauma in my life quite yet. You know, the future, who knows what the future holds. God forbid anything bad happening soon. But I always knew that like my emotions that I felt, even with like, I guess a lot of self-inflicted trauma, it was always really deep. And I always had to like sit in that emotion, and I couldn't really escape it. And I feel like that is a part of my own hyperphantasia, unfortunately. But I think me being able to put a label on the way my brain works is I'm actually getting emotional. Like, I could cry because whenever you like know there's something different about you, and it's like put you in different mental situations where you felt isolated, it can be very scary because you're like dealing with the unknown unknowns of life. And I feel like putting a label on the way my brain works has been really helpful for me in sort of coming to a new stage of my self-understanding. I'm a person who vividly feels things, and I guess I'm not afraid to admit that anymore because it's literally just how my brain works. I think unfortunately it's something that I wish I didn't have. Like, my whole life I've felt different because of different aspects of my life, whether it be my race, my sexuality, my left-handedness. I always felt like these different like key points of what makes me me are all things that like are struggles. Like, these things, like when you talk about them, you always hear people talking about like, oh, I'm struggling with this thing that makes me different. And when I and then when I started growing up and noticing that my brain was different and the way I think is different, for me it felt like just another thing that made me different than literally everyone else around me. It was just another struggle that I would have to learn to deal with, you know? But I think because of this condition in my brain and the events in my life leading to me being an artist, I see like this like brain condition, and I'm calling it a condition because it's not like an impairment. Like, it's not a negative thing. It's not like a disorder or even like an ailment to people in general. It's literally just like a condition that's, you know, another thing that sort of separates people from people who don't have the ability to see things. Like, I find it very fascinating because I sort of have validation for why I've always been so emotional, I guess. And I think it's also given me a new piece of my foundation as an artist. Because I've always had this, I've always wanted to be able to express the emotions, and especially the memories and emotions that I feel with those memories, into art. And I feel like people with hyperphantasia and choose to be artists might be in a league of their own because of what art is to us as human beings is, well, depending on who you ask, it can be a gateway to the human condition itself and the emotions that are associated with that. And I almost feel like now that I am now calling this almost like a superpower. I love comics, I love superheroes, and I feel like that this is now something for me to almost like proclaim as my superpower as an artist. Like, I literally can make images in my head more easily than other people. And it doesn't feel like I'm bragging anymore. Like, when I say that, like I was always afraid of like admitting that to myself and to other people, because it felt like, oh, Ricky, he is, this amazing artist who has, this ability to just create images so easily. And actually, let me correct myself a little bit, because I can't fully picture things in my head. Like, I have sort of it's not blurry, it's more like fuzzy or painterly. It's like a painterly image in my head, I guess. And it's also very different from having eidetic memory, which is the ability to just remember everything that you see and hear and stuff like that. Sometimes I wish I had that, but I feel like my mental problems would be even worse if I had eidetic memory. But yeah, I feel like now that I've discovered that I have this mental condition as an artist, I feel like I have this responsibility as an artist to go more into the emotions that I feel as a human being and expressing that in my art. So yeah, that's something I'm sort of balancing as I continue to create artwork. I feel like there will be times where I make art that is more emotional, and then times where there's going to be art that is more, I don't know if superficial is the right word, or more decorative, because as an artist who wants to make a business, sometimes you just gotta get a painting out, If I'm working on collections, I gotta get them out as soon as possible. I'm working on this Ice Storm collection. This one is a part of it. I've got this one that I've been procrastinating on for who knows how long. And yeah, I feel like other people who have hyperphantasia, I almost want to call you out and say that you need to start making art, because we have the ability to tap into our emotions deeply as we do. I feel like us portraying those emotions through art is the only true gateway for people to understand our emotions and how deeply we feel them. And I think that is why art has finally clicked for me. People my whole life have called me an artist because I was good at making art. But I never knew the significance that it was to be an artist in our society. I sort of always thought of it as just an innate skill that I had, and that I had the ability to train and, elevate to a different level. And as long as I, kept making better art, that would, show up in, different aspects of my life, especially financially, if I were to step into the business of being an artist. But there was a missing thing for me that I always knew was there, but I was trying to ignore it, sort of telling myself, as long as I keep making good art, people will enjoy it and people will want my art. But I feel like the missing thing for me is that I think I was holding myself back a little bit in order to conform to the ideas of art that people enjoy. And I think I finally have that key factor for me that I've been sort of avoiding. And it is that emotional part of art, because I've been too afraid of my own emotions, really, because I felt so deeply about those emotions and those memories associated with those emotions. It can be hard I imagine for us hyperphantastic people that it is very, very hard to actually, dip our toes into that pool of emotions that we have inside of us, especially me. I don't have a lot of trauma. I have a lot of self-inflicted trauma, I would say. And I think what I need to do is learn to be okay with that emotion. As long as I'm able to healthily, is that a word? If I'm able to express those emotions in a healthy way through my art, I feel like that is something, for me personally, would benefit myself and also people who enjoy art, people who are looking for that emotional connection in the art. And I think, honestly, now, the world itself needs people like us hyperphantastic artists, because of the increasing lack of connection between people, between art itself and people, and the rise of AI being this disconnected, especially generative AI art. It's art that lacks that emotional depth that people will look for in real art. And I think now that I understand more of what art is to people, I can start implementing that more into the art that I make myself. I'm very curious on the people who are viewing this video. Where do you find yourself on the scale of aphantasia versus hyperphantasia? And I feel like people who are fully hyperphantastic are also people who probably have eidetic memory, but I could be totally wrong with that. I am no psychologist or scientist whatsoever. But I feel like if you're a hyperphantastic person and you're not an artist, I want to encourage you to create art. Not for the sake of like putting in the work to increase your skills of being an artist, but to increase the emotional depth that you are able to tap into with yourself and explore that with other people who are open to feeling that emotion within the medium of art. Yeah, I want to see more people doing that. I don't get out much though, so maybe there are people out there doing that. If you enjoyed the topic of this video, let me know. I would love to hear any discussions or any points that you have about your own human brain condition. It's very fascinating to me because I do a lot of self-reflecting, especially within the past few years. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like on the video. If you are enjoying the content here on the channel, I'm sort of ramping up the videos that I've been doing recently. I have this like momentum that I'm trying to build up. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see more art from me, more maybe discussions about art and maybe human psychology. I don't know about that per se, if I'm gonna dive deeper into that, but who knows? I do plan on making more art that requires me to explain the emotions about it. I eventually am gonna talk about this painting and like the music that inspired that piece and the emotions that I felt from that music and how I was able to sort of filter those emotions into that painting. That means a lot to me. It's on its side. I should turn it.